Well, everyone, welcome back to a very exciting episode of the Storybox podcast. Today, my friends, I'm delighted to welcome Nick Vujicic. Now, for those of you that don't know who he is, I want you to imagine me back in 2008. I'm sitting down on the couch with my mum and we are watching 60 Minutes with Peter Overton. And my good friend Nick is on there. He was, I believe, only 26 at the time. Now he's much older than that, but he really inspired the living daylights out of me. His persona and aspect on life was groundbreaking for myself way back in 2008, which, quite, if I'm to think of it, was not that long ago, but still. Nick is the founder and CEO of a non-for-profit ministry called Life Without Limits. He's been featured on many different magazines, news, and he's also a New York Times best-selling author. If you haven't read his books, I highly encourage you to go do it. He's also a coach, entrepreneur. He's got many different ventures going on, which is very exciting. Nick, I could go on and on, my friend, but welcome so much to the Storybox podcast today.
Thanks for having me on the Storybox podcast, and hello, Australia.
Hello. We're saying hello back to you, man, because you are Australian, which is always good.
I know. So, but I got a lot of accusations that, after being here in America for 17 years, my Aussie accent has disappeared. And the Americans think I'm definitely not American. And then the Aussies say, well, you're kind of watered down, but we still love you. So thank you for still loving me. And man, 60 Minutes. My goodness, Peter Overton's a legend. And thank you, Channel 9, for all your support along the years. And also Channel 7 when I was a little kid back in Melbourne, when I hit national news back then. So Australia, haven't forgotten about you. Definitely want to bring my wife and 4 children there and tour our beautiful country. I still hold my citizenship naturally. But we can't wait to come back. And once all this kind of moves forward and through, we'd love to do some speeches in the years coming ahead back in Australia.
We miss you, man. And I can't wait to actually meet you in person and give you a hug. I mean, that for me would be an absolute honor. So please, when COVID does end, come back and then we'll embrace you with open arms. Tell me, Nick, how much do you miss Aussie food?
I'm okay without it. I have to say I'm okay without it. We're European in blood and in culture. So we had the more European order of food, if you will. But I mean, I miss the meat pies. I miss the fish and chips. Gosh, Tim Tams, the real ones.
Yep.
The fake ones out here. There is some of those things. And, I called Nando's many times. I'm like, move out to America. And I think they got 2 of them, but they're so far away. So anyway, I definitely, I don't know if you know this, but every time I come back to Australia, I actually eat Nando's daily while I'm there, at least one meal. I'm a Nando's addict, okay?
Are you a huge fan of peanut butter as well?
I'm not.
You're not? I was going to suggest.
Nor Vegemite.
Good. Okay. I respect you for not liking Vegemite at all. I think it's like this unpatriotic, un-Australian thing not to like Vegemite for some reason. I get a lot of flack for that, but I was going to suggest that when you do come here, there's a new place, it's a couple of years old now, but it's one of my all-time favorite places. It's called Peanut Butter Bar. But since you don't like peanut butter, I mean, nah.
Peanut butter bar. Say that 10 times. Interesting. Okay.
Peanut butter bar, Peanut butter bar. It's quite a tongue twister every now and then. But anyway, Nick, it's great to have you back on the show. I mean, we did an interview a couple of months ago. The time has literally flown. I appreciate you actually making the time to be back here. The first question, which I did ask you before, that I want to ask you now, because it's kind of like my standard question I love hearing. Who knows, the response might have changed in the last couple of months, but we'll see. But what does success look like for you?
Oh, the answer hasn't changed. So it's you reaching your full potential, understanding that when you have something set in your mind, to achieve, and it's God-given, and you feel the fire in your belly to go for it. My parents always said, "Do your best, and God will do the rest." In that, and that's separate to working toward heaven. You can't work your way toward heaven, but experiencing heaven now in a way of peace and love, and doing what you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's success. And I think we subconsciously do compare our success to other people's success from what we think is success, but then also feeling this competition that's unhealthy, that based on what you think people are thinking about you and your success, and you're trying to raise the bar when you don't really have to. Nothing wrong with not having a full-time job and you're a full-time mom. There's nothing wrong with that, or a dad. Whatever that success looks for you, it's what's most important to you that you're actually making sure you're achieving.
Where do you think this competition aspect comes from? I think it's more or less like we are looking at another person's life. We are quote judging them for the way they live. Almost, we're kind of comparing ourselves to them. Does it come from culture? Is it something more to it than that?
Number one would be human nature. I think that's our biggest fault, that we're actually human. And we were born with that human nature. And in that, it's there. Greed is there. Pride is there. Jealousy is there. Negativity is there. Lust is there. And so when you look at all these things, and then couple that with the foundation of your family upbringing, culture, belief system, cultural belief system as well. It unfortunately even speaks true to today, where, one of my first cousins, she was born in the Philippines. She looks Filipino, and she's asked by Aussies, from all walks of life, where are you from? Well, born in Australia. Yeah, but where are you from? Where are your parents from? What's your national? I'm Australian. Well, I'm Filipino. Oh, you're Filipino. And she shared with me in November 2019, when I saw her first hand, face to face, she said, yeah, it's actually something I'm still dealing with as a woman, as a wife to my husband, and as the mother of my two children, when I'm now living in a country that I still don't feel 100% Australian. Not because I know that I'm not, I know I'm Australian. Your nationality is your nationality. Where your parents are from was where your parents are from. But identifying yourself as Australian and not worrying about what other people think of you, I think that's something within that too, of feeling judged. And judging others, out of the human nature, unfortunately.
Seems like the word identity came up there a few times. So I sort of want to steer it towards you, Nick, and you finding your identity or your place, because you are from, I guess you could say, two different worlds. You were originally from Australia. Now you live in the US. But more than that, what do you see now as your identity? Where is that rooted in?
Look, I mean, my parents are Serbian. I speak Serbian. I've been to Serbia many times. I love the country. I'm very patriotic for that country. I also, though, have Croatian friends, and born and raised in Australia, now living in America. Moved from California to Texas this last 12 months, and married to a Japanese Mexican woman called Kanae. We call that Japsican. And my children have a melting pot of all these nationalities and backgrounds and influences. And so I'm me, and I think the belief system is the core of our being, of where the epicenter of epicenters are, and the influencers, including your faith, family, friends, that then depict on your beliefs on finance.
Yeah.
That then influence your priorities and adhering to concerns, if you will, of fitness based on the cultures and the people speaking in your life and your own goals and what your personal beliefs are of what priorities are, and then what fun is to you. And so, fitness, finance, fun. That's the other three layers of life that, that makes me who I am. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I identify as myself, and I never try to oppress anybody else. I never try to stop anybody else from doing whatever they want to do. And, understanding that we're all uniquely made and we're all different. We all have a different background. We all have different beliefs and all these kinds of things. But to love everyone and not to put anyone down, but also to make sure that no one else elevates themselves up higher above anybody else.
Yeah.
Which really has happened in, if you look at the revolutions that have happened in the society of the world, on a disability level, right? It was the 1980s here in America, at least, where, or late 70s, where the Disability Act was brought to, national government levels. And in 1989, I was able to, in Victoria, be the first special needs child to be integrated and not segregated into the school system. And so such minorities, if you will, then now you hear of all these other minorities who have a lot of money, a lot of voice, a lot of spotlight. And I think what's really something that we've got to be cognizant of that's really important is not to allow someone to have so much spotlight compared to everyone else. Because when a minority has the biggest spotlight, then what about the other minorities? It's kind of unfair. And so how do we as a society respect everyone, honor everyone, uplift everyone, make sure that no one's elevating themselves as a dictator, coming back down? It's an interesting world that we live in. And when you live in such an interesting world, you need to know the truth of who you are, your value, your purpose, and your full potential. And based on those 6 F factors of life, full factors, I like to call it, you don't have a full life until you're looking at all those 6 gauges on your dashboard.
So I'm curious about whether or not it is actually possible to live harmoniously without the bad in our society, without people kind of clashing with ideas, with belief systems, with all that stuff that seems to be creating a lot more tension rather than healing. And I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit, but I'm curious, like, how can someone that is struggling, and I think we touched on this in our last conversation, but how can someone really, because finding purpose is not an easy thing to do, or is it?
That's a separate question than compared to what you just said in the preface of it.
Yes.
So in Australia, you call it preface, right? Still preface. I call it preface, American, right? So I'll answer both of those questions if I can, as best as I can.
Sorry.
Can we live harmoniously? To a point. Only to a point. Because there are certain belief systems, and I'm going to make sure that your podcast doesn't get in trouble here, because I know you're being watched. And there are things that I can't even say publicly because of the hypersensitive atmosphere we have in the world right now globally. And so without getting you in trouble, I don't mind if I get in trouble, but without getting you in trouble, the way that I can say it is in some aspects, there will be things done out of other people's convictions of their beliefs and values.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm stopping them to believe it, but it's them imposing it on me.
Yeah.
To the point that it's in my face everywhere on every billboard.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about this or that. I'm talking about the entire world right now. We moved out of California because of some things that we saw coming down in 2019 that we didn't agree with already in 2019. And we saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And if you just jump in a plane from California to Texas, I can tell you as a US citizen who's been here for 17 years, no one's getting the real news outside of America. And the only people who's getting the real news are the people who change the channel to the actual real news compared to the other things. And so, again, I don't want to get you in trouble, but it's really sensitive, wherein, unfortunately, there is a time now where we have to kind of choose.
Yeah.
We're this way or we're that way. You either agree with that or you don't agree with that. And if you agree with that, then you have to agree with all the way. And you have to put your children through that course at school that is contrary to your belief system. And so in all of that, can you live harmoniously? Where we're at, I actually see one of the greatest divisions in the world. I've never seen, just like former Yugoslavia, not that was the reason for it, that was induced by other matters. But seeing America, I'm looking you right now in the eye and telling you that as Americans who are conservative in our belief system, there are more people talking about a very big dividing wall between our country. And many believe that we can't reverse what's happened.
Yeah.
And so being as loving as you can, doing what you can, and now segueing it into purpose. Can we all find a purpose? Well, if some people's belief system is that your purpose is to exist and coexist, to experience, live, and die, whether you come back reincarnated or not, and that's it, you're done, that's that. Being good for the sake of doing good, for the sake of you knowing that you did good, for you to put your hand on your back and say, I did good. Yeah. Or there is an eternal arc of what happens to your soul afterward, and knowing that everything I do here can affect someone else's eternity. No matter what it is, I think let me answer it this way, right in the middle, where I think that people can be given a sense of purpose by giving back. Yeah. Helping someone else in need. And in fact, it's one of the greatest things about what we leave behind as human beings is our legacy. Who you are, how you loved, how quickly you forgave, how you were patient, how you were kind, how you were thoughtful, how you were generous, how you know, all these things, that's your character, that's your traits. It's how many people cry when you're dead, you know, and missing you. And so leaving that legacy, obviously, children, them seeing me doing my best to be loving, kind, honoring, respectful, obedient to my wife, you know, doing what I can philanthropically to make the world a better place, being my kids' best friends as well, right? So it's all of that combined. Yes, I do believe you can find a sense of purpose.
I appreciate you sharing all the things you just shared, especially with living harmoniously. And I don't really mind you just being completely honest, transparent here. And I don't care if I get in trouble either, because we should be having these kinds of conversations. And I mean, you've faced a ton of backlash for what you believe in, I believe, in the past. So are you able to share what has actually happened to you?
Yeah, a bank kicked me out with no explanation and no desire to tell me why. I wasn't flagged on a federal list because I was able to open up another bank account. There's been some fake article published about me that framed me falsely of being anti-LGBTQ. I don't even know where to begin with that. I love everyone, if that's the question.
Yeah.
And if someone asks me my belief system and what I'm doing in my own home and what I'm teaching my children, according to us and what we believe, I'm not anti anything, if you will. Like I just like I said, you might be different than me. I love you. I respect you as a person.
Yeah.
But let's agree to disagree on some levels, and be okay with that. Be okay that I may not be able to see 100 things the way you do, let alone someone down my street who has my same religion, everything. There's 100 things that we will disagree on. We all have disagreements on it. Never would oppress, never would take away, never would whatever. And so, I know how it feels to hear that that the FBI is at my house because I have a grenade with a pin in it, a spying drone, lawsuit threat. When you go through such fire, you quickly get sharp in understanding that you need to be careful with every word you say, with every action you make. With 14 million social media fans, I have been pretty careful. I, though, also am not a people pleaser. And I'm also not afraid to say it how it is. I'm just careful because I know people who also have been canceled in the cancel culture and been silenced. And we're in this process right now, in fact, of starting our, you don't know this, I can now publicly talk about this. I couldn't when I talked to you last. We are starting Prolife Bank.
Wow.
So what we found out was that, for instance, here's a perfect example, okay? We found out that there are many banks who take our money, make money on the money, and then give away to social responsible causes, okay? That under philanthropy.
Yep.
They give to providers to abortion clinics in America. I personally don't agree with abortion. I don't want to get into that here, or which cases do I agree or not agree. Simply put, there are companies that we have to work with that may be supporting things that you don't agree with. And therein, an alternative, prolifebank.com, was formed. You can go to prolifebank.com and sign up just for announcements, just for fun. The doors are going to open in 18 months. It'll be a national bank. It'll be a digital bank. I'm a co-founder of it. And not only will it be a for-profit bank, but it'll be a for-giving bank. We're giving away half of our profits to Judeo-Christian aligned nonprofit organizations. And what's interesting that I want to share with you to actually help your listeners also understand, my cousins in Melbourne couldn't believe that we don't have a border, and we're proud as Aussies to understand, look, it's not that we don't want to help immigrants coming in, but you can't come illegally. And we've known that in our culture. And I think one of the greatest things that Australia's ever done is that.
Yeah.
As a national security, and whatever's happened in the last 12 months, I don't want to be political. I don't want to talk about the other things that I found out about Australia, but I'm just going to say, Australia did a better job than America. And us Christians don't talk about the wall because the wall is a political thing. It's a Trump thing. It's not a Trump thing. I've been to the wall. I've seen it. There are some parts of the wall that was not built by the previous administration. And I won't tell you which administration, but I'm 3 foot, 1 meter long. I can stretch out my legs in between the posts of the wall. It's a joke.
Yeah.
Governors saying it's a state of an emergency. Nothing has happened on federal. I went to the border since seeing you, and I wanted to see it for myself. And you see 30,000 unaccompanied minors, unaccompanied minors coming across to America, a portion of them saying goodbye to their mother who brought them from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and 141 other countries, including terrorist countries, saying goodbye to their mother at the border who needs to now prostitute herself as a human trafficked woman to pay off the $14,000 debt to get them there, and then say goodbye to their child and wish them all the best. 30,000 unaccompanied minors in 19 weeks. The wall is not a political thing. It's national security. And when you talk about pro-life, you can't talk about pro-life without talking about human trafficking. Human trafficking here has quadrupled in America, quadrupled. Suicide doubled, depression doubled, all these things. It's not about political things. It's about morality and heart issues, and people being silent when they should be talking, saying something, and helping. So I've come alongside of nonprofit organizations through Uncommon Giving. I'm the Chief Generosity Officer, to set up, funds like the Border Relief Fund, to help the Border Patrol Police. People don't know this. Border Patrol, it costs $300,000 to train one Border Patrol person, higher than military, higher than Navy, higher than anyone else in national security. They're committing suicide like never before, because this is a disaster.
Yeah.
So where are we? Where do we stand? How do we help? How do we bring the food bank? How do we support those nonprofit organizations who are preventing human trafficking? How they're rescuing human trafficking? So you can't talk about pro-life without human trafficking, without talking about the war, without talking about foster care and adoption.
Yeah.
So how do we understand that you need to really pull back that filter that you can't talk?
Yeah.
Because it's political.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some courageous people may end up in jail.
Yeah.
As the guinea pigs. And I worry for Australia. I can't say much, but I worry for many countries under the UN. I brand it United Nothing. That's what UN is, because I know what they do. I know what they do. I've seen what they've done firsthand.
That's good.
And I have witnesses, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And so how do we be careful, yet find our place to make the world a better place?
I really do appreciate you sharing that, because my heart is pro-life, and I'm a huge advocate for that. I'm not ashamed or anything like that to share my views on it, because we could get into the nitty-gritty of things, but a lot of the times people create the problem in the first place when there wasn't one to begin with. They over-politicize it, and they make it harder for the ones that actually want to do the right thing to do the right thing. And I think that's completely wrong. And it takes a lot of courage for someone like you, Nick, that does have an incredible audience, an incredible voice to share all this. Doesn't matter what platform you're on, and to go about creating your own bank, which I don't think is an easy thing to actually do in the first place. That would probably come with its own set of challenges. But also, I just appreciate your heart for wanting to help people that are struggling. That's where my heart is. And I may not have the audience that you have, but I'm inspired and I'm challenged as well. by everything that you're doing in the world. So I just wanted to say that from my heart to your heart, like I acknowledge you, and if that means anything,
No,
from
you're
my
one of my favorite
standpoint.
people, and you're one of my favorite people in Australia. I fell in love with who you are when I met you first, and it's something that I think you're inspiring more people than you think. God bless you. And let me just make it clear. If I'm not surprised that people who don't have the same belief system don't do what I think should be done.
Yeah.
And so my first tier of, if you will, stages and being vocal on it are these Christians in America,
Mm.
who are supposed to believe the way that I do. And if they actually believe the Bible, and if they actually want to reduce abortion by 35%, all you have to do is tell the youth in your church to keep your pants on. They haven't said that message for 15 years. So don't be surprised that people who don't think like you, believe like you, don't do as you do, but be positioning that to those who should be doing a little bit more vocal work.
I think there's a lot of fear attached to it, and they're afraid what other people might think of them or say about them. I think the world that we do live in at the moment, with cancel culture, with social media, like I've noticed, it's interesting how I've even got friends of mine that have got over 900 plus thousand followers, and they don't get access to that 900,000 plus followers. Why is that? So if they wanted to spread the message of, say, hey, keep it in your pants, young people, and actually teach the younger generation to actually behave themselves properly in the right way, especially Christians that should know better. But I mean, I was watching a video yesterday and it kind of ties into it. It's interesting how you've got the progressive and the conservative and how they both clash with each other on the beliefs. It's like, oh, they've taken the word of God and they've made it, they're trying to fit their views into the word of God, which is a very interesting point of view as well in of itself. But the Bible calls, it's black and white. It's plain and simple. It tells us to love. It doesn't say it's going to be easy to love, but there are people that have taken that and created problems for us as Christians. And it's made it even harder for, say, if you are conservative, to live in to share your message of Jesus's love, and say, for example, for a young Christian, once again, hey, do the right thing. So yeah, I mean, it's hard. And I wanted to ask you, Nick, because it is hard, how can we as Christians, like conservative or whatever, go about living the best life that we possibly can for Christ in these, I guess you could call them, end times?
I think that a lot of us belittle how powerful our testimony is. Our history is his story. We all have a testimony, a story about who we were BC, and then after we met Jesus, before Christ in my life, and then when I met him, and who he is to me, and the strength that I rely on is no longer mine or my plan, it's his plan. Having faith, knowing that he is greater than me, greater than anyone in the world, greater than all of us put together, far beyond exceedingly more than we can ever ask, imagine, or attain, are the things that he has in store for us. Not that it always makes sense to us, nor that he gives us everything we want when we want it, how we want it. That sounds like a spoiled brat and a genie. But God has order, and he knows his son, Jesus, exactly when he's coming back. And I want you to be optimistic as much as you can. And I think in that, it's your personal walk with God, prayer, fasting, black and white written, fasting. Couldn't care less how you pray, how long you pray, but have you fasted? When was the last time you fasted for a friend without food? Black and white, these basics are in there to memorize scripture. You're speaking to the guy whose mom was 6 years old in former Yugoslavia, and the government came, knocked on their door, and took over their farm and their food and their house. My parents were in refugee camps. My grandfathers were pacifists. They were both in jail for that. Coming from former Yugoslavia, we're not, how would you say, allergic to the idea, let's put it this way. We know that no nation is immune from splitting.
Mm.
Look at the Jews.
Yeah.
In wherever they're at, whatever nation they're at around the world, they have their own stores, they have their own clique, they have their own finance, they have their own banks. You've got the Amish people, they have their own, right? It's just unfortunate, kind of being prepared to be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking you in the eye and telling you in 25 weeks, I will not be dependent on grocery stores. We will have chickens, we will have our food, we will have our water, we will have our generator, we will be totally off the grid. You can find me if you want. I can't disappear. No one can disappear unless you're a billionaire. But we will be self-sufficient because I don't like what I'm seeing. So we, on one hand, you got the jet engine to be proactive, where the chips come in, where without that chip, you can't buy or sell. So we're going back to Amish days. So you can't buy or sell, but you have what you have, but then you got to barter.
Yeah.
And then this whole distraction about cryptocurrency, holy moly, what a distraction. I haven't touched it. I won't touch it. I'm very scared about it. Where one day we'll wake up and it's zero. And then we find out, the economic system here in America, it's not backed up by gold, the cash. It's really, really interesting where America, as one nation that I do know pretty well now, is leading, where it was not like this. It was not like this. And things have drastically changed in the last 10 years.
I think NFTs, all those things, cryptocurrency, I haven't done a lot of research into it, but it does look scary, especially with cryptocurrency. Like in one day, it could go from $30,000 to $150,000, and then it could just drop like to zero, just like that, because it says so. I mean, like, that's not sustainable at all. Like, why would you put your hard-earned money into that?
So look, I don't want to discourage anybody from doing whatever you're doing on a financial thing. Go to your financial advisor, blah, blah, blah. But look, me as an accountant, financial planner, graduated as a double major in accounting and financial planning. I was in the stock market at age 16. I was an options trader at age 17. I was in real estate investing at age 19. And when you had the fundamental analysis of a stock, you're not buying crypto, you're buying an index.
Yep.
Based on something that
you're buying something that's tangible.
It doesn't even compute in my itty bitty committee of my brain. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, that definitely, man. I sort of want to steer this conversation to a few other questions, if you don't mind, Nick. I love this part. I've only asked this question to one other person, but I'm curious to hear your response. When was the time in your life that you felt the most vulnerable?
When there was a car bomb threat.
Wow.
I've had many experiences. Our plane got struck by lightning. I was renewing my work visa, and they said, no, your name without fingerprints is spelt exactly the same as someone we're looking for who's a terrorist.
Wow.
Talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability where, 2011, I lost all my money that time. 19, I lost all my savings at that time. Money came back after 2011. Money came back. Money comes back. Money goes. Money, comes back. Money's money. But many vulnerable times in my life. And when you can admit that either you're in control of some of those or none of those, that's where you'll have life lessons. And there were some, without naming any, there was some vulnerable things that I found myself in that I've learned life lessons in, and thus not doing what I used to do that maybe at that point wasn't convicting, or maybe at that point didn't seem as at all harmful. But when you're in the spotlight, and I just don't want to stumble. I don't want people to say, "Oh, look, Nick's just another guy that had this problem or that problem or did this or said that." I want to be careful with every single moment of my life moving forward, because I don't just hold my life as a life. I hold my family and then God's purpose, not the sense of purpose, but God's purpose for me is to be that vocal, clean, righteous, as best as I can. So help me God. Person who never becomes somebody as a reason why they don't believe in him.
I see that, man. What has being in those vulnerable moments taught you about trusting God?
Oh, everything. Those are vulnerable moments that are the best moments, because that's when you know you can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's totally out of your hands. You don't know what's about to happen. You're like, thank you. I know you got this. I'm scared. My knees are shaking. My palms are sweaty. But I know you're here and you've never let me down.
Yeah.
And eventually things settle and you move onward and upward.
Never staying on the ground, getting back up and moving forward. I like to call it soaring like an eagle does.
I like that. And when you're down and you're stuck, don't get stuck in the yuck.
Don't get stuck in the yuck.
Get up. He'll help you and he'll carry you, but don't get stuck in the yuck.
Learn what you need to learn when you are on the ground, which is where all the lessons will come. Glean from all of them, but then when it's time, and you'll know when it's time, get back up and soar once more. Like I always say, you get to soar higher than you did before, because it's true, because you've learned more than what you did. A friend of mine actually sent me this, they call them hero bands, and it's got their trust in the Lord. And I honestly did not expect her to send this. She just sent it. And it was in one of those times, Nick, when I needed it. I just needed that reminder. And I just broke down in tears, because that was exactly what I needed in that moment. Did not expect it, but I needed that rebuke, that reminder of, hey, your life, Jay, is not your own, it's God's. And you need to learn that, yes, you can go ahead, you can be impatient all the time, but trust in God, because he'll never fail you. So, yeah, I thought I'd share that. Yeah.
Amen.
Nick, 2 final questions for you, man, because I just noticed the time. Sorry. Okay, this is one of my all-time favorite questions. What do you love the most about yourself and your story?
There's a verse that comes to mind where it says, he uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And it doesn't make sense that he can take our broken pieces and do something beautiful with them. Or it doesn't make sense as well to use a man without arms and legs to be his hands and feet, and ordain him as an evangelist, preaching the gospel to 733 million people, 21 presidents around the world, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, standing in front of the gates of hell and redirecting traffic. None of it made sense in a sense, but it was ordained and planned from the beginning of time. And it's not that it was God's plan and best plan that I was born this way, nor with human nature. That's not his best. But what the enemy tried to do so bad God can turn into good. And I think that's what shines the most. And I'm reminded of how much he is merciful to me through my wife, and how much he loves me like I love my kids and my wife.
There's that verse, I think it's in Corinthians, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Something like that. He's certainly done that with you, man. He's given you everything that you need to change the world, and in his name. So
it's not crazy. It's divinely provident. I've been actually convicted, Jay, to not say, oh, it's crazy, oh, it's insane, or just awesome. It's divinely providential.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. My final question for you, Nick, I asked this one to you at the end of our last conversation, but I want to ask you again, seeing if it might have changed. Who knows? It probably might not have, but it's a hypothetical question. So imagine with me for a moment that you've been able to reach the age of 100. All your friends and your family have decided to put together a film for you of everything you've ever said and everything you've ever done. Don't ask me how they got it all. We'll call it magic for the sake of argument. But they've been able to get it and show it to you on your 100th birthday. What do you want that film to say and to show about your life?
I would hope that as bold and confident as I come across, that they believe I'm still humble. And I gave God all the glory. And he was just simply one of the most spoiled kids of God who ever lived. And here's his family, and here are the opportunities, and these were the teams that were around him. These were people who prayed for him every day. These are financial supporters. This is his mom, this is his dad, this is his friends. And these, special moments of those around me. I would think that would be the highlight for me.
Love that, man. Where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about you, and what's next for you?
I'm starting a TV talk show.
You are?
Yeah, it's going to be big.
That's amazing, man. I can't wait.
Very, very big. Very, very big.
Is it going to be bigger than your podcast?
It's going to be bigger than big has ever been. We have friends, Jay, that have encrypted ways to compress internet data.
Wow.
Which allows us to upload our TV talk show. I'm not doing Netflix. I'm not doing blah, blah, blah. I'm doing my own website, our own network, translating 78 languages, including 19 dialects of sign language. And from day go, we're praying that we get about 100,000 to 200,000 views per language from week one, which at 8 million to 16 million views would triple the biggest talk show viewership in America's history.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I know.
Man, I can't wait to see that happen. That is going to be good.
We're recording August, so please pray for us. We're pretty excited.
We'll keep you in my prayers, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on the Storybox podcast.
Jay, let's talk again 6 months from now, okay?